Hello and a warm welcome. The magic of the World Economic Forum at Davos is that you can bring together people and conversations which would otherwise be impossible. And you're about to witness a peak Davos moment because live here at the NDTV studios in Davos, I am delighted and privileged to be joined by one of the world's leading technologists, chairperson and chief executive officer of IBM, somebody with very proud and strong Indian origins, Arvind Krishna. Thank you so much for joining us. And with us is somebody our viewers on the NDTV know very well, but also somebody who went to the same IIT, Kanpur. So both these are Kanpuria boys from IIT. So a lot for the IIT Kanpur circle to be chatting about as well. I'm joined by Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw, who's leading the Indian delegation at the World Economic Forum, our Minister for IT, Information Technology, Information and Broadcasting and Railways. Thank you very much for joining us. Fantastic to have both of you. This is the one conversation I've most been looking forward to. I want to start by asking you, Mr. Krishna, about your view on what Ashwini Vaishnaw and the Indian government are doing at this moment in terms of trying to build up an AI ecosystem. We are in the AI age. We've seen all the tech developments being done by the tech giants in the United States, IBM amongst them. We're seeing low-cost, high innovative value systems coming out of China. Where do you see India shape up in this global AI race from your lens?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. So first, it's a privilege to be here with you and with Ashwini ji. So let's talk about this. And these are conversations I've been having with him, I think, for almost 3 years now. It actually comes down to the word independence or sovereignty. I think you would call it Viksit Bharat. When something is so important that is going to be used for the next many decades, it could be incredibly expensive, or perhaps it's not in your control if you get it from outside, then you must have capability within the country. And that's what I've always encouraged Ashwini ji to invest in for India, whether it's in the public sector or whether it's incenting the private sector. It doesn't have to be everything, because I believe that small models are catching up to the capability of large models for perhaps 95% of all that you do. So how do you encourage that ecosystem, be it the underlying semiconductors, be it the model building, and actually most importantly, which the world doesn't worry about yet, the usage applications, which is where I think the breakthrough will come for India locally.
No, so the big concern in India amongst many who are watching is that, we produce so many technologists, IT, techies, chief executives like yourself running the world's biggest companies. We don't produce a Deepseek. Why is it? Okay, so we understand what's happening in Silicon Valley, but why is it that when that breakthrough cutting edge innovation happened, it came from China and not from India? And what do we need to do now to try and ensure that the next Deepseek moment comes out of India?
Look, putting aside a huge amount of pride, which one should have, there is a 20-year lag. It's purely, I believe it is fundamentally a question of only two things. Economics, meaning how much capital can you put at risk? Because doing things like Deepseek means 9 out of 10 fail. In the Indian ecosystem, 90% failure is still not smiled upon. Some failure is smiled upon, but not 90%. So there is the economics coupled with the risk-taking appetite of people to go ahead and do that. Now, going from $1 trillion GDP to 3 to 5, that unlocks a lot more. What it unlocks is, if you kind of take how much is left at 5 trillion, perhaps almost $1 trillion can be applied towards all this. When you're at 1 trillion, you have zero. So this is just that question. So that's why more of it will happen now. And as the next 2-3 years unfold, I believe even more of that will happen. So those are really important considerations.
Mr. Vaishnaw, in the last few years, you've made an effort to try and build out an ecosystem, A, around semiconductors, B, around ensuring that we have enough compute power for Indian companies to be working on. How confident are you at this moment that even if Deepseek didn't happen in India, that India won't be left behind in this AI race, that it won't just be the American models going up against the Chinese models and the world having to pick between them, that India will be a third pillar in this race?
So many people today in Davos, they say that it's going to be a T3 world. So technology, 3 big technology countries in the world. And I'll pick up from where Arvind said, 95% of the work today is done by small models. And the 12 models that we are building, they are in the range of 50 billion to 120 billion parameters. A 50 billion parameter model can run the AI needs of every enterprise in the world. So we have to look at the entire AI ecosystem, the topmost layer, the usage, the applications. That layer is where the maximum ROI is going to be. Return on investment उसी में से आएगा और बहुत ज़रूरी है कि AI application की दुनिया में India lead ले. We have been a very good IT services industry in our country. What matters is how do we quickly understand the enterprise way of working, understand the technology and apply that technology in the enterprise. And that's where our IT companies are doing so well today. They have all pivoted. Their AI hiring has increased 33%. Second is the model. I said we are building 12 models and very soon we'll be launching 3 or 4 of them very soon. Third, the chip model, the semiconductor layer. Our semiconductor program has progressed very well, and today in our country we are already we have 10 plants in which construction is going on. 3 plants pilot production has started. 4 plants will be completing their pilot production and commercial production in 2026. Then comes the infra layer. $70 billion worth investment is going in infra layer. Then comes the energy layer. In the energy layer, we have opened up the nuclear energy to the private sector through the Shanti Act, and that's where this entire stack of AI is going to have a major play in our country.
So let's deconstruct this one by one, right? For example, the application layer. Now, one critique can be that this is, of course, the use case, but this is where the Indian companies always restrict them. They're not doing fundamental core research and innovative breakthrough, which is happening typically out of a Silicon Valley or in some cases out of China. Do you think that criticism is fair? And if it is fair, why does it not happen?
It's actually not fair.
Not fair.
Because unfortunately, the majority of the work in India has historically been not actually in creating new applications, but in maintaining and evolving them. So actually, if you construct the new applications, there is a lot of innovation, because then you have to deeply understand the enterprise and you have to deeply understand the AI itself. So that's why I actually think that that criticism is not fair. The value, every tech evolution, not just AI, it starts at the infrastructure and semiconductor layer, typically lasts 2 to 5 years, then moves into what we would call the middle enabling layer. In this case, it is models. That is always unique. In the case of PCs, it was operating systems. iPhone and Android was also operating systems. And then you get to the applications. In all cases, in less than 10 years, 90% of the value shifts to the innovative applications, not the maintained ones. And so that is what Ashwini ji is talking about. And if you take advantage of that, it'll unlock a huge boom of innovation and monetary returns.
Let's now come to the large language models, because there are 2 ways of looking at it. One theory is that LLMs get commoditized and there's no point in countries like India spending a lot of compute power, time, energy and effort in building it. You can build on other models that have been built. The other is very core to the idea of data sovereignty and AI sovereignty, that you can't depend on the Americans or the Chinese. You have to build this out yourself. What have you been how do you come out on this?
I've been very public on this, and that is not just my words, that is the actions of our company and what we recommend to our clients. I believe that the very large LLMs, because even 50 billion and 100 billion is a LLM 2 years ago, but the trillion parameter LLMs, I actually believe will be a commodity. A commodity can have value, but a commodity means there is no switching cost between them, which means price comes down to whatever is the minimum bearable. And the reason is the amount of investment. Those are going to cost you $50, $100 billion a year to get built. And if that's the ongoing investment, you can look at the economics and say maybe there'll be a half dozen people who'll supply them. But if switching cost is low, which is what we observed, price comes down. The models then that can be infused with national data, with Indian local health data, with defense data, with how work is done in the Indian legal system, those can be much smaller and incredibly effective for that purpose. If those can be built in India, 95% of the work will be done there, and it's fine. For the other 5%, use a big one.
You've been interacting, Minister Vaishnaw, very closely with the Indian companies building out these LLMs. A couple of them get released literally in a few weeks from now. Do you see any USP, anything? One is the point that Arvind ji makes, that because there's so much data in the Indian context, their languages, they can be useful there. Do you see anything which India can export and make of use to the rest of the world?
I would like to add to what Arvind ji said. There are 2 points here. First point is about the size of the model, which is required for 95% of the work. Our models, which are built by the 12 startups that we have funded and supported, and one of the IITs which have supported, are good for practically every application that we need in our country. I wouldn't take any names, but I can tell you in full confidence that during one major defense scenario in our country in the recent times, the sovereign model used in our developed in our country, used in that particular operation, the results it produced was phenomenal. Phenomenal, I'm saying. So, if that is the condition, if that is the scenario that we have experienced so far, the idea of having, as Arvind ji said, the trillion parameter models will become commoditized. What is important is have those bouquet of smaller models which are very focused, very solution specific, sector specific, and start using them so that the productivity gains start coming in the economy. And that's what our focus is. The second part is about the innovations which are going to happen. Today, if you look at all the 10 large models in the world, they are all in a very small bracket of performance. There is very little differentiation between one model from the another. So, that means the next level of innovation will come from something very different. It might be an engineering innovation, it might be a math innovation, it might be a totally different way of looking at or designing a model. And that's where some of our very smart startups are focused on. There is one startup which has today, instead of doing a sound to text to sound, they have come straight from sound tokenization to sound to sound. So that kind of innovation is going to come from any part of the world, and I'm sure India will be among the leaders in that.
We're seeing two broad approaches play out, and I want you to share your insights on how viewers on NDTV should wrap their heads around it. One is American tech companies betting on AGI, artificial general intelligence, hoping that that's literally around the corner. So do you want to give us your sense on how far this bend is and what lies when we get on the other side? And the second is what the Chinese are trying to do, which is to embed AI into all different kinds of processes. How do you look at these two approaches, and what would you recommend for a country like India?
So look, first let's just look at the spectrum of this is belief, almost like religion, dharma, as opposed to science. So there is a set of people who believe that AGI can be done, you just need to scale more, you need to train more, if we could just do 10 times more compute, we would get there. There's another kind, and I lie in that camp, who believe that these current technologies are not going to get to AGI. You are going to need to infuse knowledge into models, and we don't quite know how to do that yet. So why do I say that? To give you some intuition. Today, if you were to say, does a ball go from up to down or down to up, the models will all tell you it goes from up to down. But they don't know that. What they're doing is they're actually doing an incredible amount of compute to go do that. If that is the gap, then actually the human is way smarter because the human knows that. They're not rediscovering it each time you ask that question. So that is how you fuse those two. Nobody knows how to do that. When we learn how to do that, maybe we'll get towards AGI. And a lot of people in academia have my belief that you need to fuse knowledge with these statistical techniques that are inside the models. And so then my belief becomes we've got to use these big ones as commodities. You got to have the specialized local ones. Actually, I'll quantify it. A 50 billion parameter model is roughly 100 times more cost effective to run and 100 times more cost effective to train than a very large model. So the number of variations also of it you can do for all different purposes is massive. The big one, you're going to have like one or two at that cost type. So that is why I believe that this is the correct path. A lot of small models, domain specialized, industry specialized, language specialized, and that can unlock innovation because now you could get a startup who can get access to some of the infrastructure that Ashwini provides and with $10-20 million worth of expense can actually innovate something new. If you're on the other side of AGI, if you don't have the 100 billion, you're not trying to compete with that, but I actually believe that's not going to happen.
So one theory is bigger the better. The more compute power, the more money, the more muscle, the higher the probability of innovation. You're taking, Ashwini ji, a different approach. The question though could be, given how much China backs their industry and how much of a head start they've had in this process. They've literally been doing this for 2 decades. Do you feel we're late in trying to get onto this bus, and can we catch up adequately to actually make this a 3-car race?
I think AI revolution is going to be a multi-decade phenomenon. It's just a beginning of the entire innovation which is happening. And as so many people say this, the brain just uses 3 watts to do what it does, whereas an AI data center uses megawatts and megawatts of hundreds of megawatts of power. When that level of innovation is still left in the journey, I'm sure India will be among those who innovate very well. I fully agree with Arvindji's point that, and there are so many other very mature and very wise technology advisors who have all said that focus on smaller models, which can be very effectively at a very low cost of compute, low cost of power, and low cost of training, can be deployed, and the efficiency gains which come with it, the productivity gains, the innovation gains which come with it, that is where the focus has to be, and have a suite of sovereign models which can be used even if any country tomorrow denies the availability of models to us.
Mr. Krishna,
Can I jump
yes.
in with a sports analogy?
Yes.
Let's go to cricket.
Is it cricket? Ah, good.
It's
Well
gonna be
done.
cricket.
He knows which analogy to come up with. Baseball doesn't work here.
No,
Yes.
so let's go to cricket. Let's imagine that there are 2 countries playing and it's going to be a 5 test matches. Because in some of your questions, you're actually assuming there is much more progress than it is. In a 5 test match series, we are on the first day of the first innings of the first match in AI.
Wow.
That's
a good analogy.
That is where we are. It has started, the players are known, but we don't know who's hot, who's cold, who's going to do what. That is kind of the analogy of where we are in AI, which is why different approaches can actually both win. By the way, China is not chasing edge AI to our knowledge. Maybe there's a small science experiment somewhere. They are much more enthused about applying it everywhere. And I do think that that is the correct approach for India.
So, both of you went to IIT Kanpur, and I want to ask you this question, Mr. Krishna. Do you think you could have done what you've gone on to do over 3.5 decades at IBM if you'd stayed back in India? And if not, what's your message to a young boy studying in IIT Kanpur at this moment? He wants to be the next Arvind Krishna, but he wants to do it back home.
Yeah. Look, I think about this a lot. And I will tell you, so I graduated from IIT Kanpur in 85.
मैं आपसे नहीं पूछूंगा आप कब graduate है इसे मुझसे मत पूछना.
No. He graduated after me.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. I graduated in 1985. And I did actually try for a short time working there. But the conditions were that people were very risk averse. They didn't really want to spend capital, and they just wanted to copy, not really invent. I think by 2000, not by 2025, that had changed. And so I think that the conditions have changed, where when I look at the graduates, for example, from IIT Bombay, half of them are doing startups in Bombay or somewhere in India. If I look at the startup ecosystem that we work with in India, it's lively. So today you have opportunities in both places. And I would say, by the way, the analogy on me, you go look at somebody like Chandra. Didn't he get all the way up to the head of Tata and Sons by India? So there is that. I think that the number of tech companies that are coming up now.
No, but for every Chandra, there's a Sundar Pichai, Satyanan. I'm just saying the probability of success is higher, probabilistically speaking, if you were in Silicon Valley than if you'd stayed back in the day. Is that changing
No,
now?
I'm actually, with respect, going to completely disagree with you. So what is the Indian diaspora in the United States? Something like 4 or 5 million. It's also kind of self-selected. You're taking people from the top institutions, from the top colleges, whether it's in medicine or engineering or in business, and bringing them here. So there's a self-selection in the input. And now you're saying, okay, I can now focus on these 40 out of 4 million. So if you look at it, you've self-selected a crowd, and now you're this thing. If those opportunities were there, it would be there. I would actually tell you that Indians on the global stage are massively underrepresented. Because well, if you take China out of the equation, it's 1/4 of the global population. Is 1 out of 4 of every leader that you see in Davos Indian? When that happens, we have equal representation.
On the promenade, we have lots of Indians. Whether they're leaders or not is a different matter altogether. Ashwini ji, how is, say, just going back to the IIT Kanpur metaphor, studying today different from back in the day? Because you also went abroad to study, then you came back. Do you think Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai and Arvind Krishna can legitimately come out of India, build an IPM type company, but staying just in India without having to go out?
No, you're right, Rahul. And see, those were very different days. 92, I was among the, actually I was the inventor of text to sound, text to speech transformer. The GPT, T is for transformer. So had those days been equivalent to what they are today, it would have been 3 or 4 patents. People from Stanford University, they came and they said that this work is good enough for a PhD, and this can be patented in US. Those days are gone. Those were very different days. We didn't have those kind of opportunities. Today we have 200,000 startups in our country. One of the top 3 startup ecosystems in the country. Every student who comes out of IIT system wants to have a startup today. So things have really changed in the last decade.
But the biggest names there have been chasing the volume that the Indian market brings.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Where are the massive tech innovative products that have come out of India which have become global sensations?
Absolutely, I'm telling you. That is the way it always goes. First, you start with volume, things which can bring you a very big, you can build an enterprise around it. Then comes the ability to invest in deep tech, which is inherently more risky. Today, we have 24 startups which are designing chips. Designing chips is the most risky thing ever in a startup. 24 of them. 18 of them have got VC funding already. So that change is happening now. So last 10 years has seen that fundamental change in our country, which is providing better opportunities for young students to come out and become Arvind Krishna or become a Sundar Pichai.
I want to ask you about this. What we've seen is a mammoth effort to build up a chip semiconductor ecosystem. So yes, in chip design, India is at the cutting edge, but when it comes to the semiconductor itself, we're just in the process of trying to catch up, and even the size of the chips would be much bigger. One theory is that that's good enough, at least you're in the race. The other is you're just basically trying to play catch up.
No. You cannot jump to the last goalpost without going through all the steps. And it is really important to do what Ashwini ji has recommended. Start in semiconductors. We had this debate. Should we start at 45? I was actually almost recommending start at 45, not even 28, which is an even older technology. Cut your teeth because there's almost no risk in doing it. That'll give you confidence. It'll create a local labor force that knows how to do it. It'll create the engineers who now know the problems. Then only can you go forward to 14 maybe. Once you do that, then you can learn how to go. There is a sequence of learning that you have to go through. Now, the advantage is that each step can become faster, and because you know that how to do it, the risk can become lower. But there is no way to avoid it. By the way, this is why, let's note, China, with all of their spending and the 20 years that you talked about, is still not at the leading edge. Because if you try to shortcut it, it's not going to work.
But I was very surprised with the fact that China turned down the most advanced chips that Donald Trump was willing to offer. Does that in some sense indicate that they're just doubling down on Atmanirbhar, that they don't want to make their supply chains dependent on American chips?
This has been going on for 10 years there. So they didn't want it because if you have that, then the lower quality internal alternative will never have a market.
You know, I want to tell our viewers this, that if you ever go into Minister Vaishnav's office, you'll notice that there is a nail that's hung in the wall, and you've seen this too. Yeah, and you know, there's nothing on the nail. So the first time I went, I thought maybe this is some painting, railway ministry painting that's gone missing. Next time again, there was a nail and nothing on it. And the third time I actually asked him that ye कील लगी हुई है, इसमें कुछ हो नहीं रहा है, क्या है? And he said that's where the first semiconductor manufactured in India will come up, the first wafer will come there. So when does something come up on that nail which hangs in your office?
2728 from Dholera Tata's fab. And what Arvindji was saying, close to 75% of the volume of chips is in the 28 nanometer to 90 nanometer range, which means all your electric vehicles, your automobiles, your trains, your missiles, your drones, your large part of the telecom equipment, even 80% of the chips in an iPhone, they are all in the range of 28 nanometer to 90 nanometer. So it's very important to get into that segment where you learn to manufacture, which sometimes I say we have to learn to walk before we learn to run. So it's very important to first learn to walk and create that ecosystem so that we are in a situation where we can then jump from 28 nanometer to 7 nanometer. And we are working with IBM to have that journey, and that the entire path from 28 to 7 is today very well understood, very well constructed, and by 2030 we should be at 7 nanometer, by 2032 we should be at 3 nanometer. So that journey is very clearly laid out, and we will be among the top 4, top 5 semiconductor nations in the world. There is no doubt about it. Entire semiconductor industry believes that given the end-to-end capabilities that we have in India, a very large talent pool, complete design capability, entire product is designed in India. 2 nanometer chips are designed in India. The manufacturing capability which is now coming, and the market which is getting developed, electronics manufacturing as a demand for semiconductor chips, that market is developing very rapidly, 20% CAGR, 20% growth rate annual. So with that as the complete ecosystem developing in our country, we are a natural country where semiconductor industry has to grow. That's why it's the right time and the right strategy.
Since
I want to just give a little bit of a visual to your audience. When we talk about 28 nanometers being old, take the size of my thumbnail. Do you guess how many devices his factory has to learn to put onto that area? 500 crore.
500 crore.
500 crore. 5 billion transistors are at 28 nanometers in that. You need to put 5 billion transistors in that area with no mistake, complete repetition, and a 100% success rate.
That's quite incredible.
Okay. At 7 and 5, it is 2 more zeros. So I think we should learn to put 5 billion on before we go for 50.
No, sure. So before I wrap up, and since I have this incredibly rare opportunity of having both of you together, I want you, Arvind Krishna, to tell every parent watching at this time, or every person who's trying to find his way with so much AI and tech coming in, wondering what do I study, what do I not, how do I prepare for the future. Forget being Arvind Krishna. How do I just find my feet and find something to do which keeps me relevant, given also the very real loss of displacement? मुझे नहीं पता आपकी हिंदी कितनी अच्छी है कि नहीं. हिंदी इंग्लिश मिक्स करके बताएं कि जो लोग अभी आपको देख रहे हैं उनको आपकी क्या एडवाइस है कि आगे के करियर के लिए, आगे की जिंदगी के लिए तकनीक की इस दुनिया में क्या सोचना चाहिए?
देखो, सबकी उन्नति सिर्फ एजुकेशन से होने वाली है. एआई की दुनिया में
इतनी अच्छी हिंदी बोलते हो आप बोल रहे थे मेरी हिंदी अच्छी नहीं है. इतनी फर्स्ट क्लास आपकी हिंदी है.
देहरादून के हैं.
हाँ, और कानपुर में पढ़े.
लेकिन लोग समझते हैं कि कुछ नहीं सीखना क्योंकि एआई सब कुछ करेगी. बट लेट्स स्टेप बैक. Critical thinking, whether it's in physics, whether it's in math, whether it's in Hindi, whether it's in English, whether it's in history, is going to still be essential. So you got to critically think, is this advice I'm getting correct or not? Does it align with what I already know or not? Note, I said already know. That means you need a knowledge base. But maybe just like when I went to college, the debate was, are calculators good or bad? And many people held the belief if you use calculators, your brain will turn into mush and you can't do math. Okay, complete and utter nonsense. So it's the same debate now. People have to use AI. It means you can do your research faster. It means that it can help you write, but you should take on the final product. So it can be a starting point, shouldn't be the finishing point. But I would turn around and say, get depth of knowledge in the topic where you love. And I'll go back to me. I come from a very small high school, by the way. Most of my class did not pass. Yes. So that is factually true. You got to say, what do you really enjoy doing? And I figured out I love doing physics and math, so then I could do engineering. By the way, when I joined Kanpur, I was probably at the bottom of the rung in terms of how much math I knew. I thought I knew a lot. I knew nothing compared to the kids from Delhi and Bombay. But you can work your way up. So be confident that you can also learn and then try to excel at what you're good at.
His is an inspirational story. Not just for the background, but also where he's reached, and also the role model that he's become on the global stage, and so many young people would then look up to you for that.
Best part is he is able to guide us not only in policy making, but also in the way we should be looking at approaching technology, the way our country should be strategizing. All those things, Arvindji is a very big help in that.
So you have, Minister, a big AI summit happening, a global AI summit, the Impact Summit happening in February. You want to set out your expectation for where you want to place India in the global AI journey through what you do in the third week of February?
Three very specific points. One, impact. The name of the summit is AI Impact Summit, which basically means how do you use AI models, AI applications, the entire AI ecosystem to improve what you are doing currently, to get efficiencies, to get productivity in that, get a multiplier effect in that. So impact is first. Second is the entire global south is looking up to India, given the fact that we have created the UPI stack, we have created that entire DPI, and the world is today adopting that, using that. So can we create a UPI-like stack for AI? That's what the world is looking at, and we are moving in that direction. Third is making sure that whatever apprehensions people have about AI, the guardrails, the guidelines, the safety features, that entire stack also gets built in India.
And hoping to amplify some of these thought conversations, NDTV has an Ind-AI summit happening in February, and I hope I can use this platform to invite you again. You're coming back, I suppose, in February again, so we'd love to have you back, talk about where India is at and where it needs to go from here. This has been an absolute delight. I have loved every second of this conversation. Thank you so much for taking our time. I hope you didn't freeze.
Yeah, it's not too bad over here yet.
Thank you so much for making this possible, and thank you for the ministers very graciously and publicly admitting the role that you're playing in trying to help shape some of these thoughts. And since you're at the cutting edge, there's always great support and insight to have. Thank you very much, Arvind Krishna and Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, for joining us here at the NDTV studios in Davos. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you. Thank you.